Despite predating most video games, this series has the classic gaming trope of the escort mission. Yay. Solar-powered android, Kikaida 01. A few years ago, I talked about Jinzo Ningen Kikaida, and even later I talked about its anime adaptation. Well, today I'm taking a look at the original show's sequel, 1973's Kikaida 01. Is this a welcome upgrade, or is it like Windows Vista? Let's find out. After the defeat of Dark, the deceased Professor Gill's brain is implanted into the body of Kikaida, and with the aid of some of Gill's closest associates, who have also implanted their brains into Kikaidas of varying colors, the newly formed Kikaida squad pursue a little boy named Akira. In response to this new threat, one of Dr. Komyoji's earlier creations, Kikaida 01, a robot created prior to Jiro, awakens to protect the mysterious boy from the clutches of evil. But watching all of this is a sinister threat that casts a big shadow. That's a stupid reference that will only make sense later in the video. While I love Jinzo Ningen Kikaida, the sequel feels very lacking. Despite the fact that this is 01's show, the series relies way too heavily on what worked in the previous series. There's the aforementioned Professor Gill and Kikaida, who are now one person that feels nothing like either of the previous two. But in addition to that, they bring back Jiro Kikaida so early on in the show, and have him stick around for such an extended period of time, that it feels like they didn't even try to give 01 enough time to shine as his own character before shoving the past down our throats. Even accepting that, however, 01, known as Ichiro in his human form, isn't a terribly interesting hero anyway. He's given a weakness similar to Kikaida, just replacing a flawed conscience circuit with being solar-powered with a finite battery life. Unfortunately, outside of the early episodes, this weakness is rarely utilized, and perhaps even wound up forgotten by the writers, resulting in Kikaida 01 being a little too good at doing his hero stuff. Opposing him is the Kikaida Squad, a group of Kikaidas of varying colors who lack any monsters to go up against the heroes. Each of the Kikaidas can change into a monster form, and they even fuse to form the silly-looking Gatider. But aside from being Kikaidas and having grunts, these guys aren't much of a threat, resulting in them being rather quickly replaced by another sinister organization, Shadow, led by the evil Big Shadow, a guy with a silly hat. Shadow is the evil organization for the remainder of the series, even bringing Gil Kikaida into their ranks, and a good many of their robots are based on yokai, resulting in the robots tending to be more supernatural in nature, despite being robots. The group's first general, Shadow Knight, is a decent enough villain, but he winds up replaced by Zadam, a costume manned by two guys that looks pretty silly. I don't quite understand what Shadow's end goal is, aside from the cliched world domination. Also, apparently, because they're all evil robots, they view things as opposites, so they think evil is good, beauty is ugly, etc. It doesn't mean much, but it's a thing, and I just felt like I needed to talk about it. Then there are the side characters. Akira, who we learn is being pursued because of schematics for a powerful giant robot his father, Professor Gill, imprinted on his back, hates the fact that the bad guys are making his life miserable because of the plans on his back. He even goes as far as to try and scrape the skin off his back just so that he can have a somewhat normal life. Working to protect the boy is the mysterious woman Rieko, who fiercely defends the child, gradually coming to trust Kikaida and 01. And then there's Momochi Gunta, an inept photographer who takes up Hattori Hanpei's role of comic relief. Unlike Hanpei, however, Momochi is so insignificant to the series that I didn't even notice when he stopped showing up. Soon we're introduced to another boy, Hiroshi, who is Akira's brother, himself imprinted with the other half of the robot schematics, making him also a target.
He's looked after by a homeless woman, Misao, who winds up being a major source of comic relief as the series progresses, replacing Momochi with much greater success. Eventually, Shadow gets their hands on both boys and uses the schematics to build the giant robot, but the Kikaida brothers destroy it, and despite Big Shadow declaring that they haven't given up on creating the robot, this plotline is never mentioned ever again. On a more positive note, over halfway through the series, we're introduced to Bajinda, an enemy robot that Ichiro chooses to spare by installing a conscience circuit into her. In her human form, Mari feels isolated as an individual, a robot, who looks and thinks like a human, yet who is still learning how to be human. She reminds me quite a bit of the animated version of Kikaida, in that she has trouble fitting in with society. This gives the series some pretty great story moments. She is one of the best parts of the show, but she unfortunately comes a little too late to save the series. Also, Shadow decides to install a bomb in her that will detonate if someone unbuttons Mary's jacket, which feels like a lame excuse to try and get her undressed a lot. That just feels awkward. Also, even later in the series, they introduce yet another robot character. The honorable yet evil robot Waruda, who has a similar moral conflict, as he wants to destroy Zero-One, but also wants to do it in one-on-one combat, but also has a soft spot for Bajinda, as well as a crippling fear of dogs. While memorable as a character, he ends up falling flat, and comes across as more pathetic than conflicted.
To put it bluntly, Kikaida 01 is not a good sequel to Jinzo Ningen Kikaida. It's no wonder why there was no third season in the franchise, and the next time Kikaida would grace television would be the aforementioned anime, which, again, I've already covered in another video. It has its good points, Bajinda specifically, but it has far more flaws, so I can't recommend Kikaida 01. Until next time, this is me, ProtoMet. See ya.